Welcome back to the Food on Demand podcast, where we dish up insights on the future of restaurants relating to off-premises operations and the overall digital dining experience, and explore how this industry is reshaping the way we eat. I'm Bernadette Heyer, Managing Editor.
And I am Adam Wahlberg, Associate Editor. Food on Demand is your exclusive media source here to help restaurant operators meet the digital guests where they are. Be sure to check out our website for an array of content and subscribe to our weekly newsletter.
Yes, and now before I get into the guest interview today with Deborah Matteliano, she is the Global Head of Amazon Web Services. It's time for our Quick Bite segment once again, where we share what's been sizzling in our kitchens lately. Adam, take it away.
Thanks, Bernadette. I recently did a fun interview with a guy named Tony Isles, who's a delivery professional with his own business in Seattle called Tony Delivers, which is a great name. He's actually become a bit of a celebrity out there in the short time he's had his own delivery operation running. He launched it earlier in the year. And he kind of saw this opportunity because Seattle had been going through a bit of turbulence in its delivery market because the Seattle City Council passed an ordinance raising the minimum wage for app drivers, and then as a result, third-party delivery providers raised their prices, and Seattle consumers a little irked, and Tony saw that as an opportunity, and so he launched his Tony Delivers site with a proposition of, I'll deliver anywhere in a 1.5 mile radius for just a flat fee of $5. That was the whole bit. And it's been working for him as a one-man show. He's been staying busy. And he was able to identify this as an opportunity because he had been delivering for the third-party delivery providers for a few years. He knows that world. In fact, he had said he has made close to 10,000 deliveries already in his time as a driver. So he knows the market, he knows the city, and it's been working. So it's working so well. Later this month even, he's going to be launching his own app, and he now has dreams of expanding into other cities by enrolling drivers in these cities and empowering them to set their own flat fees. So we'll see how he goes. He's definitely a dreamer, and he's got a vision. Is he destined to be a true competitor on a national scale one day with the DoorDashes or the Uber Eats? I mean, no, that'd be insane. But do I think with his proposition and his sort of approach to doing this, could it work in other cities enough to sustain his livelihood and maybe some other drivers in other cities? Perhaps. But he'll be a fun guy to keep an eye on, and I will definitely do so. Back to you, Bernadette.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. It's always fun to highlight some of the local delivery organizations or people. Clearly, such a small part of the whole third-party delivery huge ecosystem, but it is interesting to see in local areas some businesses are more interested in finding maybe a local person or some type of local partnership to help do some deliveries at less cost. So I'm glad you highlighted Tony. We like to mention that. All right. So for my newsy item, you may have heard of a game coming up around the corner, the Super Bowl, of course. And it's a huge day for the restaurant and delivery world, as I'm sure you all know. In fact, 1 in 7 Americans will be ordering takeout on Super Bowl Sunday, and that's around 48 million people. So it's also a big moment for marketing creativity as well. And I wanted to mention a little fun promotion that Taco Bell did. They actually set up photo booths in some select drive-throughs. And so if you're a Taco Bell's rewards member, you go through this drive-through as normal. And at the end, there's this photo booth set up where you scan a QR code and it takes photos of you and the passenger side. You can pose. And the point is that they're having some customers appear in their 2025 Super Bowl commercials. It's a fun way to get your customers involved, but it's also an interactive kind of marketing play tailored into the big game. Taco Bell said they wanted to showcase real fans rather than celebrities, so that's pretty cool. So I just want to mention that. And while the Super Bowl is a big marketing moment, as mentioned, it's also one of the busiest delivery fulfillment days of the year. And so to help restaurants prepare, Adam is actually hosting an upcoming webinar called Tackling Super Bowl Restaurant Delivery Challenges. And in this session, you're going to hear from experts on how to optimize your team and use data to stay ahead of the competition on game day. So be sure to look out for that on our website. And if you're in the restaurant industry, you won't want to miss it. So thank you so much. Great. Now it's time for the guest interview. So talk to you soon, Adam.
Thank you, Bernadette.
All right, now it is time for our guest interview with Deborah Matteliano. She is the global head of restaurants and food tech at AWS, Amazon Web Services. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to highlight you today as well as AWS, but also just your leadership role in tech as a woman. And you do various speaking opportunities and so forth. Lots to dive in today. But to start, Deborah, can you give me a background into you and what led you into your current role today?
Sure. My path has been very windy. So I would say for anyone listening here that isn't sure if they're in the right space and has taken a bit of a non-traditional path, hospitality is a great place to end up. I actually began my career working at a retail store. I was a store manager for Lululemon, and I loved the ability to help customers solve very human problems. I'm also a yoga teacher part-time, so it was a natural evolution. And then I continued working in sales. I thought I was going to go to law school, so I thought sales was going to be a part-time thing to pay the bills until I continued my education. But I ended up falling in love with it, and I realized what was cool about retail, and then I went into healthcare as well as politics, is that when you find your superpower, for me, that was talking directly with customers and seeing if I could change minds and influence minds and hearts, but then applying that to different areas. So I'll give you a quick example. When I was in my first sales job within healthcare, I had a manager tell me that if I asked the kind of questions that I typically ask, that I was never going to sell anything. And so that was probably a pretty humiliating moment, and definitely a moment where I questioned, where am I? How am I here? And if I were to look back right now, it would seem so strange that I started there in healthcare consulting and then here I am today. But I think it started this spirit in me to defy the odds a little bit and to get where I am by asking good questions and seeing where that leads me. Asking questions helped me uncover needs for my customers and deliver great results. And then I continued moving up in sales across my career until I got the opportunity to help launch Uber Eats. And that's what really brought me into food tech. And what was great is I didn't know where I wanted to end up, but I was honing my superpower of sales and business development and growing a market and sales management. So the moment the opportunity arose with Uber Eats where they needed someone with that skill set, I was able to go right into an area I love, hospitality tech, and make an impact. So I would say for anyone who's non-traditional, I was also an English major undergrad. Like I should not be here. And now I think about generative AI and autonomous agents for most of my time. Very windy. And as long as you're curious and asking questions, you can set yourself up for the right opportunities when they arise. Hope that answers your question.
It does. And I appreciate you diving into your journey. It's so interesting to hear people's background and how they end up in their current roles. And clearly helping with Uber Eats got you into the restaurant sector, technology sector. Is there any other thing that attracted you to the kind of restaurant world?
I think for me, hospitality is a very human sector. I think it's Will Guidara who said hospitality is the art of giving people more than what they ask for.
Sure.
And there's something really caring about that and really inspiring about that to me. So in my mind, that deserves the best technology. Like that deserves enabling that at scale at the highest level because it's how we care about each other. It's how we eat, it's how we gather, it's how we make memories, it's how we grow as families and build relationships. I think there's something special about hospitality. I was always interested in solving human problems and not just going into tech or business for the sake of it, but it's the goal of hospitality, enabling that at scale that drives me. And tech is just the enabler to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And so now you're currently at AWS, of course. Tell me about your role there and what AWS does for restaurants.
Sure. So people ask that a lot because Amazon plays all across the retail and restaurant spaces in all kinds of ways.
Right.
AWS powers about 90% of the world's largest quick serve restaurants and over 90% of the world's largest food delivery brands. So we are super embedded in the background of most restaurants and restaurant techs that folks would interact with on a daily basis. And we help in a whole host of ways. If you think about the consumer experience, anything from mobile apps and online ordering, think Starbucks mobile app that runs on AWS as an example. Just enabling the digital experience. Think of anything that restaurants need to do with data and deriving insights at scale. The use cases really span across the eater journey, all the way from distribution to the restaurant tech side to even food delivery. So we cover the gamut. I could probably waste our time talking about the hundreds of use cases and case studies we have with restaurant brands around the world, but most of what I do is help brands uncover use cases that they want to solve with the cloud or with technology, and then guide them to get there. So most of my time was spent in C-suite discussions with QSRs or food tech leaders to help them figure out, how do we develop a more customer-centric brand? We strive to be the world's most customer-centric company. And so for me, it's, how do I enable restaurants to get there? How do we bring what Amazon does really well to bear in the hospitality industry?
Yeah, and I appreciate that you mentioned all the different aspects, because there is so many, your toes are dipped in so many aspects what AWS can help serve. Speaking about the data side of it, I know you have technology that really helps restaurants understand their data, their customer data. Can you talk a bit about that and why that's really important for restaurants today?
Sure. I think one of the biggest challenges with data for restaurants is all the different sources that it can come from. You have
Mm-hmm.
your POS, you have mobile app, you have drive-through. There's so many different ways the customer touches the restaurants or that employees interact with the restaurants. So it can be difficult to get it all in one place and understand
Mm-hmm.
how to act on it. So data rich, insight poor is definitely, it's definitely runs amok within the restaurant industry. Was your question about how we can help solve challenges with data?
Yeah, absolutely. What type of technology do you guys provide for restaurants for that?
So we have hundreds of different services. AWS is the world's largest platform for products that have to do with restaurant data and technology. So really runs the entire gamut. But I'll give you an example of a couple of use cases to make this easier. Domino's
Sure.
is a brand that we've helped a lot, and you might know they had a goal to deliver pizzas in under 10 minutes, which is really difficult to do when you consider all that goes into it and logistics. We help them deploy a predictive ordering model so that they could actually understand what a customer might order before they even press order, and then begin making the pizza right away so that they were able to meet their goals of under 10-minute delivery. So that would be one use case. We help a lot with contact centers for, say, food tech brands. And we've all been in the situation where you order from food delivery and the meal doesn't turn out how you want. And then you're in this process where you're already hangry, but you'd like a refund, you need the company to make it right for you. So we do a lot of automation for that, helping customers get what they want immediately using chatbots, generative AI, and then employing and helping contact centers and employees to be more empowered with how they serve customers. So that's just two use cases. We have so many mobile apps that run on AWS, tons of different personalization that we offer, chatbots for employees. It could go on and on. I'm happy to dive deeper into any of those if that's interesting.
I am curious a bit about the chatbot aspect. Is that AI ran, generative AI? Can you explain that a bit for us?
Yeah, you got it. So yes, most of the chatbots are generative AI because they're coming up with
Mhm.
that new content as they're chatting.
Right.
So you might have actually seen Amazon launch one recently. It's a shopping assistant called Rufus. So if you're on Amazon.com, you might use Rufus to help you answer some questions about your product journey. Hey, what do other consumers think about this? Or what did other consumers buy after looking at this product? Sort of aid you along the journey. So a lot of the chatbots we're seeing are to help the customer order more quickly, get questions answered, even to know about dietary restrictions, or, hey, I have an
Mhm.
allergy. What can I order from this restaurant? So there's a lot of use cases that can solve for the consumer. But then for the employee, this is a huge one. So if you're working on a makes line at a lot of quick service restaurants, you need to know a lot of information and customizations for certain dishes, and it can become overwhelming. In the moment when you've got a big line of customers and you're behind, it can be hard to know what components to put together. So we also develop a lot of employee-facing chatbots for training and different operational elements in the restaurant, so they can always stay up to speed and be serving the right food, the right time, and the right way. So those are a couple chatbot examples, but we're also just seeing them pop up everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is something I'm seeing is restaurants interested in chatbots to help training their employees or those simple questions that could be asked quickly and typed in opposed to searching or having to call someone. Yeah, there's so many use cases for chatbots and we're definitely following that closely. Sometimes when a restaurant thinks about AI, generative AI is what's in the headlines. That's what's the big buzzword right now. But AI has been around for a while and there's very simple back of house mundane things that AI can do when it comes to, let's say, bookkeeping or chatbots for helping employee answer things. Can you break down if a restaurant was interested in AI for the first few basic steps? What are some things they can look at simply, and then maybe in the future, of course, there's robots and automation can go pretty far with AI. Any take on that?
Oh, it's a great question because it's definitely a journey. And as someone
Mm-hmm.
who talks about AI on a daily basis, I'll actually be the first to tell you that not all AI use cases work for every restaurant. And a restaurant shouldn't pick up on an AI use case just because it's the new exciting thing to do and everybody else is talking about it. So,
Mm-hmm.
what we like to say at Amazon is work backwards from your customer. What is the restaurant trying to solve for? And as a restaurant, you should have enough stock of your business to understand where the challenges are. Do you need to solve operational efficiencies? Do you need to solve something, some kind of friction in the customer experience? Is it employee training and store operations that you need to solve for? And then you can get started with the right AI use case.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give you an example. Let's say you've got supply chain issues. Maybe then you deploy generative AI to start reading your supply chain contracts and making that easier on some of your staff members or procurement folks. So that would be one example. But I also see restaurants all the time coming to us and saying, what are you doing in generative AI and what can we do? And it's not really the right question to ask. It's what do you need? What's your biggest challenge? So why solve something with AI that can be super complicated when you might actually be able to solve it with training? For
Mm-hmm.
instance, employee chatbots are great when you have a 2,000 page training manual and you need that to access data right away in the moment. But if there's something particular in the employee experience you need to solve for that could be solved by better in-person training or a different
Mm-hmm.
operational rollout, sometimes it's a human problem and not actually something that technology would be the best fit to solve. I think that it's really all about understanding where the holes and gaps are in your business and where's the business opportunity. Otherwise, why justify the investment? Because
Right.
AI looks like this magic solution that's going to cure everything, but there's technical resources that go into deploying it. There's testing and training of models, and it's not just a plug and play in all use cases. So you also need to be scrupulous about where you choose to invest your time. And I say this again as somebody who talks about AI every single day.
No, I really love that insight because I think a lot of restaurants are testing it, trying it, and some are still looking at like, where do I even begin? So I appreciate that take on it.
Sure.
So I also want to just move into where do you see the restaurant industry heading when it comes to adoption and technology? That's a loaded question, but maybe the next 3 to 5 years, what are you saying?
Hmm. I think we're going to see restaurants continue to become more customer centric in the way that users engage with their brand. So I think we're going to see more text-based ordering. It's easier to order via text than an app. We know they have easier response rates and consumers see those messages more quickly and it can be more logistically efficient and easier for the consumer. So maybe that. I think we're going to be developing more ways to make ordering easier and less complex. I think that there's going to be more robotics, but for very specific use cases. So the kernel concept, I think, is magnificent, where you have a lot of automation on the make line, but you do still have some employees there to lead sort of high level tasks. So I see restaurants being able to deploy automation and for the rote activities like Chipotle's avocado that cuts the avocados and then be able to spend more time with customers or develop recipes or do some of the high level heavy lifting that really helps a brand grow. So that's what I would say overall, but who knows what's to come. I think that one of the other things that we'll see is probably more computer vision,
Mhm.
just ways to improve food quality, ways to reduce bottlenecks in stores. But again, it really depends on the problem you're solving. And I also think this kind of tech can be contagious. So once one QSR rolls out text-based ordering, everyone likely is going to catch up. So we'll have to see who the early adopters are.
Yeah, I heard that from some mid-sized brands when I asked this question. They say we're not going to be the first mover, but we'll be a fast follower. So people are certainly eyeing what the QSRs will be doing with automation. So
Yes.
all right. Thank you, Deborah. Moving away from the tech segment and AWS segment, I also just want to talk to you about being a woman leader in tech, knowing this is sort of a male-dominated industry when it comes to the technology sector. What key advice would you offer to other women looking to break into leadership roles, or in general, anything you've learned on your journey so far?
Yeah, sure. The first thing I would say is that confidence does not have a gender. You can remove this idea of, oh, I'm a woman in tech and I'm at some disadvantage. You can still show up with just as much confidence and see that as something that's genderless. And if you're confident in who you are, other people may not notice your gender as a negative going in. So that's what I would say first. I think there's a lot being talked about with imposter syndrome and all these tips for how to get rid of imposter syndrome. And I'll say something that might be controversial. I think sometimes imposter syndrome can be good. I think sometimes if you have it, it means that likely your dreams are big enough that you're encountering new challenges and that you're on the way to growth. So it can be a nice signal. And of course, when you're trying new things, your brain's going to go into protection mode. Our brains are built for survival, not for flourishing. So you're going to have some limiting thoughts and ways of doubting yourself. And I think in those moments when you feel scared or you feel like you're entering a situation where you're the only person who looks like you in the room, it's easy to curl into a ball and go into your shell. But in my opinion, if you don't know something or you feel uncomfortable, the cure for that is learning. You can't control how you look. You can't control what gender you are. You can't control your age. There's so many factors that obviously do go into executive presence that sometimes are out of our control. But you can always control how curious you are. You can always control how good of questions you ask, how much research you do, how much you seek to understand the customer, add value to the meeting. So I think it's also easy to get caught up and be in your head like, oh no, am I the youngest person here? Am I qualified to be here? And I think sometimes when you do have that imposter syndrome, it can also mean that you're too focused on yourself. You're too focused on what you have going on versus what you can give, what you're here to do. And so thinking outside yourself, why am I in this meeting? What can I give to the customer? What insights can I provide? Like, who cares how I feel about myself today? What am I here to do and bring and give and offer? Which I think goes back to hospitality. Like, how do you give more than people ask for? And when you're doing that, you don't feel like an imposter. So those are some of my tricks for getting around it. But I'll say for me, I've had all kinds of maybe even embarrassing or humiliating situations because I do look different from others in my role. And as I've grown as an executive, I even had something happen as I was growing as an executive where someone thought that I was an assistant. Which is, I think, a very woman-centric type of problem to encounter. And you can easily say, oh, goodness, that's humiliating. This is so awful. Or you can say, not everybody's going to empower me. And sometimes I have to empower myself. So sometimes you just have to be your biggest cheerleader. Sometimes you have to make your own list of your accomplishments and be meticulous about it because nobody's going to do it for you. And it's okay to cheerlead yourself and encourage yourself because no one else is going to do it for you. It is up to you at the end of the day to light your own fire.
I love the words of wisdom. I certainly myself have experienced imposter syndrome often. It's something I'm currently dealing with, and I know listeners out there will definitely resonate with that advice. Any career highlights you'd like to mention so far?
Hmm. It's easy to say, oh, I had this speaking opportunity, or oh, I spoke at AWS reInvent, or you can say so many exciting things like that. But for me, what's so exciting is this week, actually, I got 3 different texts from former employees where 2 of them had new jobs and 1 of them was starting a business. And all 3 of them just said, thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself.
Mhm.
And that means the world to me. And I think that's the best we can do for each other. I see talent in someone when maybe they're in that moment of doubt and they don't see it. And I also think when you light the way for someone else, you light the way for yourself. So as I was coaching those employees, it's so funny. They said, oh, you believed in me. Oh my goodness, I didn't even believe in myself when I was believing in you. But by encouraging someone, you light your own way. By shining the light on someone else, you shine the light forward for yourself. So just thinking back and reflecting, like to have the privilege of being that person who empowers someone and in a moment of doubt is magnificent. And whenever I get a text like that and I know that I was that person for someone, I feel like I'm doing something right.
I love it. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. Anything else you want to mention when it comes to this topic about being a leader in this space or in general, what you're looking forward to in the tech industry?
Hmm. Well, one of my favorite quotes that I would share for any maybe woman
Please.
listening to this, or anyone who's growing as a leader or who feels a little bit different in their career is, I think Madonna said this, the bravest thing I ever did was stick around.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the trends are. It doesn't matter how you might be feeling this year or whether that promotion's coming or this and that. Like, if you just have the staying power to stay on your own 2 feet and dig your heels in when it gets tough, like, you can make it through those different innovation cycles and continue to position yourself as a leader. And I look a lot to women like Madonna and women who've really constantly reinvented themselves with the times. So
Yeah.
I think the women in particular who are going to continue to lead the restaurant industry, and there are so many. We're lucky in hospitality to have this very vibrant community of women. But I think the ones that are going to do the best are the ones who can adapt with the new technology, continue to reinvent their value proposition, and then just simply stick around. I think there's something to be said for staying in it and continuing to grow the industry.
I'm very excited for all the women listening to hear that advice, or anyone in general who's aspiring to be a leader or an entrepreneur who might be listening. Before I let you go today, Deborah, I'd like to go into our fun segment at the end called Did You Leave Room for Dessert? Where I'd like to ask a few random questions to get to know you better outside of your role, if that's all right.
Okay, let's do it.
Awesome. So let's see. What is one thing you're currently obsessed with, like a book, a hobby, a trend, or so forth?
You know what? There's two things. One trend I really liking is called micro learning. So I
Hmm.
seem to read 5 books a month.
Oh, wow.
I think it's something like most Fortune 500 CEOs read 4 to 5 books a month. So if you aspire to be at that
Yeah.
level, continue to learn at that rate. But obviously, it's really difficult to find time to learn every day. So what about micro learning? And there's different apps that just give you little facts and different ways to repeat material throughout the day so that you can level up intelligence. I think that's fantastic. Micro learning, cool concept. I love the idea of just getting 1% better every day. It feels accessible. But the thing is, I actually have this on my desk right now. This book is called The Power of Fun. I think this is an amazing book. It's actually by this woman who she wrote this book called How to Break Up with Your Phone. So maybe a bit
Okay.
controversial, but basically, how do you start feeling this sense of aliveness within your day to day if you are stuck on a screen or stuck in a really sedentary lifestyle? What are some of the ways to reignite your imagination if you're maybe a corporate worker and you haven't tapped into that side of yourself? And how do you go beyond the digital to go within yourself and explore your creative side? So I think we all need to probably have more fun. Hospitality is great because it empowers a lot of that. There's room for fun along with innovation and success. And sometimes we're doing our best when we're having fun with it and we're in the flow state. So I always want to learn more about just how to bring more lightness and excitement and energy to my work.
Absolutely. It's all about balance, right? With everything. So
Yeah.
that's great. That's great. So let's see. If you weren't in the restaurant tech field and ended up in a whole different career path, and it could be anything at all, where do you think you might be?
Mm.
Hard questions.
I might be, oh, there's so many different things. There's so many different ways that could go. Maybe I would be doing yoga full time and doing silent retreats and living in a cave. There's part of me that would love to do that and be a starving artist as well.
Yeah.
There's part of me that would love to run a restaurant and make really delicious donuts and maybe make gluten-free treats for folks who have dietary restrictions and make them really wonderful. Those are some ideas I have. And also probably in another life, I was a motivational speaker. So my
Yeah.
favorite thing is really just coaching and empowering people. And I think so much of business really is that. Like, you're speaking to a CEO, you're really helping empower them to get to the bottom of a pain point or a goal and find a way to achieve it together. And so I think so much in life just goes back to coaching and encouragement, and doing
Yeah.
full time would be a great dream for me.
You certainly are an excellent motivational speaker already, and I am happy that I've been able to speak with you and hear that. But I think that's all the time we have today, Deborah. Is there anything else you'd like to mention before we say goodbye?
Hmm. Think I would say that for anyone that is going through any kind of challenge or hardship at work right now, because at least for me, sometimes when I listen to these podcasts, I'm like, oh, does it have anything in here for what I'm dealing with today or for this
Right.
that I'm having? One little trick that I would leave folks with is sometimes when you think something is hard, it's because you haven't asked yourself how it can be easy. So instead of, oh, this is so challenging, it's how can this be easy? Make a list of 5 ways that something hard you're dealing with could be easy. And it's amazing the kind of progress that you'll see. I always just love figuring out ways to shift your mindset into more progressive or more growth mindset. And that would be a hack that I've used a lot recently that I would leave the audience with.
I love it. And thank you so much for the inspiration and all the great conversation we had today, Deborah. I look forward to continuing to speak with you more. And thank you again so much for being on the podcast.
You're welcome. Can't wait for Food on Demand this year. And thanks for all the great work you're doing in the industry. And thank you for being a woman leader in tech. You inspire so many as well.
Thank you, Deborah. We'll talk soon.
Okay, talk soon.